A very long, twisted tale with multiple updates and a deeply evil HOA. OP sold a parcel of family land to a developer who built a neighborhood. There's now an HOA, and they're aggressively trying to take the rest of OP's land. Originally posted by Throwaway 5847. So, long story short, today has been an absolute crap show. I can't even comprehend where to start. So my parents owned about 30 acres of land in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, on the outskirts of town. My parents built their house in the late 80s, and that's where I've lived my whole life. My parents passed away, and I inherited the property, and it's all my land, or was my land. Back in 2005, this developer bought up a bunch of neighboring land and wanted to buy my land. I told him I was willing to sell 10 acres furthest from the house, which is the adjoining section to his neighborhood. He asked for 20 acres, and I told him that the second 10 acres would be 3 times the price, and he agreed. And we signed the paperwork, and he bought the land, and I was paid for it. End of story, or so I thought. The land sat empty for over a decade, since it took a while for him to sell the plots of land that he made to home buyers, and his company built houses. From about 2005 to 2012, the land sat empty, and I didn't mind. I still mowed the grass and whatnot to keep it tidy, but I never tried to take the land over or anything. By fall of last year, he had finished the entire area, and there's about 200 homes in that neighborhood. Because of the neighborhood, my 10 acres is now worth about 10 to 20 times what it was originally worth, and the HOA knows that. Since September of 2017, I've had a bunch of angry letters and citations left on my property and in my mailbox. Some of them include having a barn larger than 7 by 7 feet. I actually have a 20 by 40 barn. They said having abandoned vehicles on my property, and it's a project car shell that I'm working on. I have the actual chassis in the barn, but it needs quite a bit of work. I bought an old rusted body, and it sits outside and will continue to do so until I can deal with it. Having a non-conforming mailbox, which I still have no idea what the heck this is. Having improper roof tiles, again, no idea. I ignored them, and I told the HOA members that I'm not part of their neighborhood, and therefore have no reason to follow their bullcrap rules. The HOA says since my property values have gone up, I owe back dues from the date I sold my land, before there was even a single house built, and have to correct everything on the list. The back dues are currently $10,200, but they state that if I don't pay by December 31st, 2017, I'll be charged interest that accrued. Again, no idea where they are getting the interest from, but I do believe their HOA fees are around $750 a year. It'll cost me about $15,000 to $20,000 to fix my house. I think it's absolute bullcrap that they can even make me try to do so. First, I went through all the documents I signed, and not a single document from the developer makes any mention of an HOA or my association with it. I have no idea why the HOA is coming after me. I live almost half a mile away from the nearest house that belongs to the neighborhood. The entire neighborhood has its own little custom street signs and lamps. I don't have any of that, so how can they say I'm part of the HOA? They said to either pay up or they will put a lien on my property and take it over. From what I understand, if I pay the $10,000, doesn't that mean I'm admitting to guilt and being forced into the HOA? Update. So I just had an hour-long discussion with the lawyer, and he went through all the documents. He asked if I was sure that that was every document, and I told him that it was, and it was. When I sold all the documents, I put them all in the same folder along with my taxes. He says that there is no chance I'm in the HOA since I didn't sign anything. He let me know that he'd be glad to send them a cease and desist letter to the HOA. I brought up adverse possession, and he suggested that I don't pursue it since I want them to leave me alone rather than to instigate anything bigger. So, for now, he said to not pay anyone or sign anything. He'll mail out the C&D letter today, and he says that if the HOA tries contacting me, I should just tell them to contact him instead. So I think I'm in the clear for now. New update. So I met with the real estate attorney that was referred to me by a Redditor on here, and I did the title search, and I'm in the process of trying to find the old developer's master plans. So far, here's what's been dug up. I sold my land to developer A. He owned the land for about 2 years and then filed bankruptcy and lost the land to the bank. That's when the maintenance of the land went to crap and I was mowing it and taking care of it because the bank didn't care. Bank sold it to developer B, and that is the person that built the current neighborhood. We got in touch with developer B, and he said he was no longer part of the neighborhood, and in fact, the HOA is in charge of the entire area. His company just owned the lots and they sold and built on them for the families, and they have zero say anymore. I asked him about the master plans and if he thought he owned my remaining 10 acres, and he said, absolutely not. The entire neighborhood sits on old land, plus the 20 acres that were purchased from me. So he was helpful, and it was clear he had no wrongdoing. I spoke to the lawyer to see if we could file an adverse possession on the land that I maintained, but he said it would be a waste of time and money, but I was just going to do it to spite the HOA. The title search and everything came up clean. It showed my parents as the previous owners and then me, so no way they could have owned my land. The records go way back, and there is a clear chain of ownership, as my lawyer put it, and it's incontestable. We sent the HOA a cease and desist letter, as well as to stop contacting me unless they have actual signed documents that show I was part of the HOA. They never got back to me. I was out of town and came back last night to my mailbox missing. It was cut clear off of the post with a chainsaw, which was a wooden post with a metal mailbox on top. I told my lawyer this, and he says that is a big deal and that USPS would send the person to jail. I repurchased an identical mailbox and I set up cameras all over the property. If they try it again, I'll have them on tape. But the biggest thing we uncovered was that we found out what they are planning. Turns out the HOA wants to put in another community playground and a pool and clubhouse, and they need land. They can't expand in any other direction since they're almost on the end of a highway on one side and the other sides are zoned for agriculture. They decided they'd try to take over my land. They have yet to also file a lien on my property, so I'm guessing they were trying to force me into the HOA to make them sell my land below market value. Either way, they showed their hand and now I'm on alert. We filed a complaint with the police regarding the stolen mailbox, and we have a paper trail for that now. It's just a waiting game to see what they do next, I guess. Should I send them a letter saying that I know their plan and there is no way they can get my land? They have their monthly meeting every second Tuesday of the month, so it's in a few days and I'm sure it'll be the topic of discussion. Should I go do it? New update. So I was away for the holidays and I came back on Monday to find my project car was towed out of my driveway. My pond was emptied out and filled with gravel and sand, and a fenced off 2 acres, 2 chains by 1 furlong, of my property closest to the HOA. I immediately called the police and filed a report regarding the stolen property. The car wasn't registered and was just an empty shell, so I have no idea where it is, nor will it be easy to track. It's not worth a lot, maybe like $2,500, but it's a principle of that jerk president of the HOA. I had my lawyer draft up the C&D and sent it nearly 2 weeks ago, and they haven't contacted me in any way except this. I hired a local salvage company to come and tear up the fence this weekend, and they are doing it free of charge since I'm letting them keep the fence to sell as scrap metal or whatever they do with it. My lawyer suggested that I send up a letter demanding payment to fix my pond as it was filled in with gravel and sand. A local landscape company quoted me nearly $8,000 to get the pond back to the way it was, so that is what he suggested that I ask. Oh, and another $2,000 for the loss of use of the pond. The HOA has lawyered up, so I think it's best I no longer post anything on here until it's settled. I don't want to leave you all without some closure since you've been an amazing help. Final update. So, after 6 long months, everything has been resolved. This is my final post regarding this, and I already asked my lawyer if I could post this, and he said, go ahead. So the HOA board got a lawyer to respond to my C&D, and they requested a meeting ASAP with my lawyer present as well. I didn't want to go, but my lawyer suggested me hearing them out at least. At the meeting, I noticed there was the president and some of the higher-ups were not there. The board had no idea what the heck was happening, and their lawyer was just as confused as them. After I laid out my timeline of events, they thanked me for my time, accepted all the financial burden of replenishing my pond, my missing car, they couldn't locate it, and damages. I got checks for everything and got my pond restored back in April and didn't really think much of it. I found out a few weeks ago from the new HOA president. Turns out the old president, treasurer, and someone else had been stealing money from the coffers. They wanted my land to expand and put in a pool, a clubhouse, and so on, just as I saw on their website. The old board fined everyone a ton of money to get all the cash together and to buy my land. Instead, they spent it on themselves. They needed my land somehow, so they thought they could just take over the land that I wasn't using. Long story short, their entire plan fell apart after I fought back and brought to the other members of the HOA's attention what they were doing. From what I've been told, they had to sell their house to pay back the HOA and have since moved away. The HOA has offered me market value for my land, and I do plan on selling it since I don't really use the land for anything and the money isn't bad. I did not file any complaints with the postal inspector or anything since the situation resolved itself. I got a new project car, and for those asking, it was a 98 Supra with a bad engine. My new project is a 67 Fastback that I plan on restoring to look like Eleanor. Now I know I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice or anything, but you know what? I mean, this is multi-level insanity. We start the story and we feel like, okay, this is going to be OP fighting for the land, right? Oh, this is going to be tricky. He's not even a part of the HOA. What? And then we come to find out they are going even deeper with it and they just destroy his land without his permission. Oh, and they're stealing money too to fund all this from all the people. This is multiple insanity, and OP had enough guts to fight back when some people may have just taken it and just gone over all of this power and been taken advantage of by the HOA. But when OP said no, got the lawyer and fought back, the HOA had zero ground to stand on since they were being very illegal and then fell apart. The HOA president, everyone moves away, and then new people come in, and OP actually sells the land to some generous, kind people that want to just do the right thing, it looks like. Not build a bunch of crap, steal money, and just make a whole mess of things. What do you think? Way to go, OP. Harass me and mine, go to jail, posted by Runner1. Many years ago, I bought a house in a neighborhood with a very restrictive HOA. However, the property I bought pre-existed the HOA and was not included in the HOA or restricted in any way. One of my neighbors seemed to take great offense at the fact that I was not part of the HOA and did not have to abide by the overly restrictive rules. From the time that I moved into the house, he started giving me grief. First, it was the HOA notices that I was under no obligation to follow. When that failed, he began to harass me at every opportunity. 4 months on end, this guy would call in noise complaints anytime I had guests over. No party, just guests. He also habitually called in code complaints and generally harassed me and my family in many other ways. 4 months, he made my life heck. Finally, one night while friends were visiting, we get a knock at the door. It was a police officer responding to another noise complaint. What? We were just sitting around playing cards. This was the last straw. I decided to get him back, and I formulated a plan. First, you must understand that this was about 30 years ago. There were no cell phones in general use, and the average citizen did not have access to the easy communications that we enjoy today, or my plan would have never worked. I've been into radio my whole life, so my car and my house were well equipped with two-way radios. Next, it was fortuitous that my house was in a development that had only one road in or out. Also, there was a convenience store on the corner that always had plenty of cars in the lot for me to blend in with. We put our plan into action on a Friday night. We established an alibi with a close friend in town who would swear that we were at his house playing cards all night. Next, I opened the windows and placed my speakers for my sound system up in the windows facing my neighbor's house. We then cleared a hiding place in a closet with a clear view of the driveway. I then got in my car and drove to the store parking lot and found a spot that gave me a clear view of all cars entering or leaving the development. Once we established that communications were good, it was D-hour. My wife turned on the stereo to rock music at full volume, rattling the neighborhood. Also, every light in the house went on. The music was so loud I could hear it at the store over half a mile away. We waited. And sure enough, in about 30 minutes, a police car turned into the development and I radioed my wife. Working together, she and her sister quickly turned off the stereo, pulled the speakers from and closed the windows, turned off all the lights, and then quickly hid in the closet. The police arrived, pulled in the driveway, and found an apparently empty and dark house. Windows closed, doors locked, curtains open, lights off, and driveway empty. My wife and her sister, they sat silently in the closet while the officers knocked on doors, shined flashlights in windows, and walked completely around the house. Eventually, they decided the house was empty and left. I watched them exit the development and head back towards town. We waited about 30 minutes and repeated the procedure. Windows open, speakers up, stereo on full blast, lights on. About 15 minutes passed before the police returned. I radioed my wife. Windows closed, speakers down, and lights off. Once again, the police went to my house. They tried every door and spent more time looking in the windows. They even sat in the car out front for about 20 minutes before leaving. About 15 minutes after, they disappeared towards town. We repeated the whole procedure once again, and this time it was less than 5 minutes before the police returned. And this time, they had their blue lights on. Oh crap. The police pulled into my empty driveway, but immediately backed out and went to my jerk neighbor's house. They were there for more than 30 minutes. My wife couldn't hear everything that was said, but there was shouting and cursing. Eventually, the police left. My wife radioed me, and I returned home. 2 days later, my neighbor's name appeared in the local newspaper as having been charged with misuse of police resources, filing a false report or something like that. I don't remember the exact charges. Hey, it's been 3 decades ago. But after that night, I never have received another complaint, visit from the city, or police as the result of him, and the other harassment stopped. Now this story here is a true pro-revenge of taste of your own medicine in terms of going with noise complaints. Oh, you're going to do those on me? I'm going to put them in the mirror, stick them right back to you. Now, I do think that this HOA neighbor was clearly just wanting trouble, honestly, and the fact that the other neighbors were collateral damage, unintended, innocent bystanders was an unfortunate part of this revenge, but we do know that it got its point across with the HOA crappy neighbor here and delivered the pain. OP, you came out and you did what you had to do, got your point across, and unfortunately it was a little rough along the way with the other innocent neighbors. What do you think? HOA finds me, but I'm not even part of the HOA, with updates. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss this crazy updated story, and I will see you there.